If you hear another landlord in your community talk about every time they have an experience with a low income or a subsidized tenant, then I would have to question the landlord. In most cases, subsidized tenants are not trying to lose their vouchers. I mean, let's be honest. If someone's paying your mortgage or your rent for $1,500, are you going to do anything to violate that? The ugly truth about Section 8 tenants and or subsidized tenant. The truth of the matter is, I loved renting to Section 8 tenants and subsidized tenants when I was an active landlord. And today I'm going to show you, in today's video, I'm going to share with you my top reasons for doing so. Number one, guaranteed rents, guys. It doesn't matter what's going on in the economy. It doesn't matter what the tenant's circumstance is. You know, life happens, but the federal government is going to make sure that there's a direct deposit inside of your account every single time. Hey, it doesn't mean that it's not going to be with delays, right? Sometimes you may go 1 or 2 months without receiving a payment. And why? That's generally when Congress and the Senate are trying to reset our budget, and then everything comes to a screeching halt. For the life of your lease, typically that's likely not going to happen as often as you think, right? One of the other cons that I hear out there is it takes so long, right? The process in the beginning takes so long, the inspection period and things of that nature. And sometimes Section 8, it just depends on that tenant situation, won't cover the tenant's deposit. Those are some things you got to take a look at. However, there are more than just Section 8 programs out there. There are other subsidized programs that will pay the tenant's deposit. They'll pay the tenant's portion of the rent, should be paying based on the qualifications of that particular program, and they'll pay the rest of the rent that's due, right? Let me share with you a screen right quick, and I'm going to show you a quick email for the program is called Unity, and you may have another program inside of your city. You just got to check, right? So here you can see here, this is back around the pandemic, right? This email is dated March 27, 2020. And at this particular time, I had a property manager who was handling all of this stuff for me. And this is simply her reply, where she's going in and she's saying, hey, the security deposit for February, which was the move-in, that's going to be taken care of. There was a proration for February, the rent and the tenant's portion right here. Let me go to the Unity's page. So basically, this is another subsidized rental program inside of our area, right? And this is a non-for-profit, and they help with homeless people or other people who are transitioning to get into housing. So you're not just locked into Section 8. There are tons and tons and tons of other subsidized housing that you can tap into. The other reason why I like it is because you have a partner in that tenant's housing counselor. So each tenant from Section 8 or each tenant from any of the subsidized organizations that help pay rent or rent by the federal government, is they have housing counselors or case managers, right? And what I mean by that is you have a partner in that. You got to learn to develop relationships with these housing counselors and these case managers to help push your paperwork along the process to where you can diminish those wait times, those inspection times, that prolonged period to get everything going and the paperwork and process and stuff like that. And prime example is that same tenant, what I showed you email previously. I had a property manager who is super popular in the Housing Authority of New Orleans. In fact, she's known by first name. I had an issue, of course, with the Section 8 tenant, trying to get everything in place. And when I mentioned her name to the case manager, she was like, "Oh, you're working with her?" And I was like, "Absolutely." And she's like, "Okay, I'll get everything processed now." That's what I mean by developing relationships. You may not have that relationship directly, but maybe if you tap into a property manager, maybe a property manager be willing to help you with that, with tenant placement. Especially if you're starting off, you might not have the actual funds to have the property being fully managed by someone, but you can definitely pay for tenant placement. And a lot of times, a lot of these property managers, because they're in and out of those offices, they're on the phone with these guys all day. Not every property manager, right? There's some property managers that are specific to certain areas in your community, but specific that you might want to try to seek that out. Number 3 is contrary to popular belief. Most tenants that are on subsidized program are not bad tenants. If you hear another landlord in your community talk about every time they have an experience with a low income or subsidized tenant, then I would have to question the landlord. In most cases, subsidized tenants are not trying to lose their vouchers. I mean, let's be honest. If someone's paying your mortgage or your rent for $1,500, are you going to do anything to violate that? Probably not. That's where that relationship comes in that I mentioned earlier about the tenant's counselor, the housing counselor, or the case managers. Those come in and you want to have those relationships with that in case there are some type of adverse actions that are going in there. But I would have to really defer to the landlord and be like, hey, if you having these bad experiences, then maybe there's something wrong with your process. Did you do your due diligence? The housing authority and the subsidized program, they're going to do their due diligence, but they're only making sure that the person qualifies for the program and the funds are for those who are actually in need, right? You still have a due diligence to follow your application process, check backgrounds, criminal backgrounds, things of that nature. When I first started, again, I couldn't afford a property manager. You used to be able to go down to the clerk of courts and ask them to print out, well, not me. I would send a tenant down to the clerk of courts and ask them to print out a background check. Back then, in like 2004, 2005, that was simply $5 to the tenant. And if they couldn't afford it, I actually wrapped that into their like I would pay for it myself. Those are just some key things as to, kind of not necessarily, I'm not saying you shouldn't have certain concerns, but you should have concerns all the time, whether you're in an A class, B class, C class, or D class, right? If you're doing your thorough background, you shouldn't be having a lot of problems with tenants trashing your property and things of that nature. And I don't think it's fair to just say, hey, a certain group of people are like that. Because again, if you're getting your properties trashed and you have a 1-year lease agreement, then my question to you as a landlord is, well, how many times did you visit the property throughout the year? Why? And then you blame it on the tenant saying, well, they didn't tell me that this was broken or this was broken. And so that maintenance become prolonged, meaning that now it's more expensive than what it was if you had fixed it in the first place. You got to be a better operator in that particular case. Another reason why I really like dealing with them is they tend to make a longer commitment. I've never had a subsidized tenant ask me for a 6-month lease. It just doesn't happen. For the most part, the contract between you, the tenant, and the housing authority is going to be for a year anyway. The other reason why I like it, my 5th reason, is there are an abundance of out there who just simply need housing. When I used to put a for rent sign up in front of my house, I would say it was like a C-class neighborhood. The minute I would put it up, no lie, y'all, the minute I would put it up, I would get 5, 6, 7, 10 calls within 1 hour. That's one of those are my top 5 reasons. One, there's an there's an abundance of people out there that actually just need our help as landlords. 4, they tend to make a longer commitment. In fact, I've had tenants stay in my properties 2 years plus, some of them until I decided to sell. Another one, again, just to kind of recap, is they're not trying to lose their voucher, guys. So I don't know what these other people are talking about. I'm not a guru. I just have experience. Again, you have to use the partnership with their case managers and things like that to help you along, and the guaranteed rents. Here, look. This is some great stuff. I'm going to talk about this on the next video as to why I had this as a beginning landlord in my toolbox. I had lots of it, and I'm going to show you what it's used for. I'm not being paid to promote this product. It's just something that I had in my toolbox when I first started as a landlord. In fact, it probably was my #1 tool that I had, and I'll talk about that on the next one. This is Anitra Preston with Real Estate Talk from a lender's perspective. Check out our next video.